No prizes for guessing which city I'm in today. You can tell by the Eiffel Tower in the background. I'm back in Paris. And today I'm going to look at two museums I haven't seen before. The first is the Musée du Quai Branly, which is sort of an ethnographic museum. And the second is Arts and Metiers, which is a science museum. The first of these museums has an extensive collection of arts from pre-European societies across the world. So, for example, here we have some South American art, including the famous jade masks. It's really interesting, this collection, because it's a mix of art that's both within some of France's former colonies, but also from other parts of the world, including the Americas. Mesoamerican and South American art was always really interesting for me because their conceptions of sculpture are so different to Europe. You can have some which are half animal, half human sculptures, and they look truly unique in their own way. The collection includes work from the Incas and the Aztecs. Originally, many of these sculptures would have been painted in brilliant colors, but today most of the paint has peeled off. Moving further north, we have some works from what is now the USA and Canada. These brightly colored bowls would have been made by the Native Americans, while these wooden panels are from what is now Canada. They were ornately carved and would have been highly prized amongst the first peoples of this region. One of the most impressive rooms to me were these murals from Ethiopia. Ethiopia has been Christian for far longer than many countries in Europe, back to the time of the Roman Empire, and these mosaics, as well as some of the bishops' croziers, show how impressive metalwork and craftsmanship was in this region. Here you can see some wonderful scrolls depicting Bible stories. Heading further south into sub-Saharan Africa, you can see these wonderful examples of shields which would have been used by tribesmen to defend their families. There are also masks which played important ritual and ceremonial roles. While in some cases the context of these rituals has been lost, in others the knowledge has been passed down from generation to generation, and there are still people practicing these rituals today, many of which involve elaborate parades or dances. These masks have had an important influence on modern art, not just through Picasso and his paintings like the Demoiselles d'Avignon, but also in former French colonies who proclaimed their independence by incorporating traditional art into their own form of modern art, which was then displayed on the world stage. Some of the finest works in the museum are from what is now modern-day Nigeria. Here you have some impressive carvings of elephant tusks, and also some of the famous Benin bronzes which belong to the Kingdom of Benin, and were taken from there by the British over a century ago during the colonial era. Most of the rest of the collection is given over to works from Asia and Oceania, with these carpets from Iran, and this wonderful samurai armor from Japan being representative of the high quality of the collection. The Oceania collection is very extensive. Not only do you have these tribal posts which would have stood outside villages in the Pacific Islands, but there are also works from the Maori of New Zealand, exquisite wood carvings. You can also find tattoos on islanders in this region that resemble the swirls and patterns that you see here. And finally, from Australia, you have these paintings from the dream time, the time of myth for the Aboriginal peoples of the island. This collection of jewellery is from slightly further north, from the islands of Indonesia and Malaysia. The finish of these works is really astonishing. Here we have some works from the islands of Polynesia, where men would travel incredible different distances across the Pacific Ocean from one island to another. I just love the weirdness of these wood carvings. They look slightly eerie, like almost as if they'd come from another planet, like nothing I've ever seen before. And of course, no collection of Oceanian art is going to be complete without some works by the headhunters of Papua New Guinea, who made ornate carvings whenever they had claimed another victim, as evidenced by these poles. Of course, long pig was never going to be on the menu for me, so instead I had a wonderful steak with sauce and potatoes at Cafe Jack's just outside of the museum. It was the best meal I had on the whole trip. So, boiling hot day. It was indeed a boiling hot day as I headed down to the Museum of Arts and Metiers, which roughly translates into the Museum of Trades. The museum has exhibits on energy, transport, architecture, and fabric making, all of which relates to trades in France. The museum starts with numerous scientific instruments for navigation, before we swiftly come to a recreation of the laboratory of the famed Anton Lavoisier, who discovered the role of oxygen in combustion. Lavoisier was a famous French chemist, but unfortunately, during the French Revolution, he ran out of time and was guillotined. And time also plays an important role in this section on measuring instruments, with numerous French clocks being on display. Clocks are some of the oldest recognizably modern scientific instruments in Western Europe, but this tradition of mechanical engineering has continued throughout France's history, including up to the 1980s when they manufactured this supercomputer, and even further into the present day when they engaged in the manufacture of rovers to put on planets in outer space. France, Britain, and the Low Countries have a long tradition of textile weaving, but it was really from the 17th century onwards that technological innovations started to drive it forwards. This example of the spinning jenny, created by Richard Arkwright in England, enabled weavers to produce much more cloth than they would have previously, and this was improved by the invention of the jacquard loom in France, where punch cards allowed multiple weave patterns to be carefully stitched together, even by inexperienced weavers. Another 19th century innovation was the Bessemer process, where, by blowing air through pig iron, steel could be made quickly and cheaply. This process was also invented in England, but quickly spread around the globe. Steel would be used in the construction of numerous new, stronger bridges to span rivers as railways began to crisscross the continent. Alongside the railways ran telegraph poles, where messages could be sent down by electrical pulses. Here are some of the earliest telegraph machines. In addition, new technologies like photography and etching plating enabled images to be transferred quickly, even literally leading to the birth of cinemas. Technology has come a long way from the 19th century age of steam to the modern age of nuclear power, in which France is a world leader. Here is a model of a nuclear reactor. This was my favourite room in the museum. It consists of automatons from the 18th and the 19th century. These clever pieces of clockwork move almost like robots. This piece is of Marie Antoinette playing the harpsichord, and you can see clips on YouTube of the mechanism in motion where it actually plays the harpsichord. The final rooms offer a history of transport. Here we have a steam-powered aircraft developed in France. Unfortunately, it wasn't a great success. Here we have sailing ships, which were replaced in the 19th century by steamships driven by steam engines. Steam engines also fuel locomotives on land. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th century, we entered the age of the car. Here we have the Model T, Ford, that was the first mass-produced car. If you look closely in this final room, you may see Foucault's pendulum hanging from the ceiling. This was a way of visually demonstrating that the Earth was in motion, as the pendulum moves as the Earth moves. The final window of French technology I'm about to see is the Eurostar, which is going to take me back home. Thanks for watching. See you soon.